Is there a secret to always being motivated? Scientists have studied motivation a lot, and what they found is that motivation all comes down to the root. You may have heard in the past the concept of intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. If you have or haven't, I'll quickly explain because this is the most important thing you have to understand when it comes to the science of motivation. Edward Deci was a behavioral scientist who wanted to understand how to motivate people, and he did his work back in the 1970s. Prior to Dessie, it was basically understood that humans were motivated through rewards. So if you want someone to do more work, you pay them more. You want them to go an extra mile, you offer them a bonus when they get there. Kind of like giving a dog a treat to get it to do tricks. And this is the structure that our society was built on. This is what big corporations and businesses use. We even see this in schools and universities. I mean, I definitely remember working to win a pizza party at the end of a semester in elementary school. So Dessie wanted to find out how external rewards affected our motivation. So he set up an experiment. And he had two groups. One was the paid group, and the other was unpaid. And both groups were given the task of completing a bunch of very challenging puzzles. So the experiment tracked how many puzzles they could complete, and also how long they would work on a specific puzzle before they'd get bored or frustrated and give up. So the experiment took place in 3 phases. Phase 1, both groups, paid and unpaid, were told just to work on the puzzle, but no payment was mentioned yet. So both groups were unpaid in this phase. In phase 2 is when the paid group was told that they would be paid in relation to the amount of puzzles they completed, meaning the more puzzles they completed, the more they got paid. The unpaid group was just told, complete as many puzzles as you can or as you want to. Again, no mention of payment. And then phase 3 went back to the same structure as phase 1, meaning both groups were just told to complete the puzzles. There was no more payment for the paid or the unpaid group. And this is what happened. So during phase 1, when no one was offered payment, all the participants solved around the same number of puzzles. They worked about as hard, worked for things for about the same amount of time. So they were equal. But then in phase 2, payment was introduced. So the paid group was seen to work harder. They solved more puzzles than they had in phase 1. The unpaid group solved about the same amount of puzzles that they had in the first round. So this went along with the common knowledge. If you want people to do more, you pay them, you offer them a reward. But the interesting thing came in phase 3, when again, both groups were told to solve as many puzzles as they could with no payment. In this round, the unpaid group that hadn't been paid the entire time solved the same amount that they had been in the first 2 rounds. But the interesting thing was the paid group, who had been paid the round before, they solved less puzzles than they had, and they gave up much quicker, not only compared to the second round, but also compared to what they had done in the first round, meaning they solved less puzzles and they gave up faster than they had done in either of the 2 previous. And that's what led Dessie to realize that extrinsic rewards, things that are external to us, like money, are actually demotivating in the long run. See, something like money or a bonus might be motivating in the short term, and that's what happened in phase 2 of the experiments. But what it actually does is sets people up for failure in the long run because it takes away from their internal motivation, the intrinsic motivation that we actually want to do it for ourselves. So the non-paid group was solving the puzzles just because they wanted to, because it was a challenge, because it stimulated them mentally, and because it was hard. They had no external thing like money driving them, so whatever it was that caused them to keep working hard came from inside them. See, the paid group had the same motivation in the first part of the experiment, and that's why they solved around the same amount of puzzles. In the second part of the experiment, when they were given the external reward, that fueled them initially. But then, in the third part of the experiment, when that reward wasn't there anymore, we saw their motivation to do the task completely drop off. And the reason this is so important is because we see that extrinsic rewards seem motivating, but it's only in the short run. And that motivation will dwindle out, especially when that reward is no longer available. And that's always going to be the case when you talk about external rewards, whether it's money, status, a promotion, a look, whatever it is that you're after that's outside of you, it can't last forever. So we see this play out a lot of ways in life. A parent might tell their kid, clean your room and you can play on the iPad. Now a clean room has been linked to the external reward of the iPad. They aren't actually cleaning to have a clean room, they just want to get the reward. And now if the parent wants to get the kid to clean up, but doesn't want them to have more screen time, it's going to be a fight. And companies and organizations see this as well. They incentivize employees with bonuses for finishing a project in a timely manner, but now their paycheck isn't enough. They've come to expect the bonus potential as well. Take away the bonus, and you take away the motivation. Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I just have to tell you about my free weekly newsletter. If you want to join the thousands of change seekers just like you who get a curated list each week of 5 educational, informative, and inspiring pieces of content to help you on your quest for change, then click the link in the notes that says free newsletter right now. You'll get signed up for free tips that will make your change journey easier, sent straight to your inbox every Friday. All you have to do is click free newsletter in whatever app you're listening on. Okay, now back to the show. So that's extrinsic, external motivation. Motivation that comes from literally anything outside of you. Intrinsic motivation is the motivation you feel when doing something simply for the sake of doing it. Think of a hobby you have, maybe making art, dancing, playing video games, playing with your kids. These are things that you do not do for a result. You don't need a payment or a reward or a bonus. It is the very action of doing the thing that is the reward itself. And it's easy to assume that external motivation would outweigh internal motivation since it's more real. Money talks, right? Wouldn't money be more motivating than just some feelings? And that was the point of Deci's experiments. Theoretically, it is, but that's only in the beginning, and that fizzles out. It doesn't last. So what does this have to do with you and motivation towards your goals? Well, while it's commonly said these days that motivation is fleeting, but I think the reality when you understand it this way is to ask yourself, are you trying to rely on the right type of motivation? Because one type will last and one won't. So if you're trying to motivate yourself through extrinsic rewards instead of intrinsic motivation, that's going to be very different. And it's important to realize that even goals or results that have to do with you, that happen to you, can still be extrinsic external rewards. For instance, weight loss. A lot of people are trying to adapt a habit of getting into regular exercise. But the true motivation behind that goal is usually losing weight to look a certain way. Even though it's literally your body, this would probably still be an extrinsic reward motivation. Because in reality, you're trying to lose weight, which comes down to looks. So it's probably more about how others perceive you. Yes, it's about losing weight on your body, which seems like it would be internal. But if it's to look better or be more attractive or to adhere to some societal beauty standard, then that's actually an extrinsic reward. And that's why we see so many people start to do a weight loss journey. And once it gets a little bit challenging, they fizzle out, they fall off, they give up. Because that external motivator, just like the money being given to someone to solve a puzzle, isn't enough. But if you compare that to someone who is internally motivated to lose weight, someone who wants to do it just for the good of their health, someone who wants to exercise because exercise feels good and they like themselves better and feel better when they are exercising consistently than they do when they are being more sedentary, that is someone who will be able to deal with the negative aspects of an exercise routine and be able to stick with it. Same goes with money. Could a successful entrepreneur be intrinsically motivated? Of course. If you want to do it for the challenge, if you want to do it to bring something worthwhile to market, to help and truly serve your customers, that is internal motivation. But if you're motivated by becoming rich, having a higher status, being able to show your parents what a success you've become, again, all of those are external rewards, even though it's your bank account. And that stuff will fizzle out. One of the keys of what Dessie discovered is that there's a twofold problem with external rewards. First off, they run out. If you're climbing a corporate ladder, either you get to the top or you don't. If you're trying to lose weight, either you reach your goal weight or you don't. Either way, the journey ends eventually. And as I talk about often in the easier framework for habit building, R, easier, R stands for repeatable. If you are going to make a habit sustainable in the long term, it has to be repeatable forever. So often with external rewards, you're only doing it till you get to an endpoint. And then your habit that you set in place to get that reward, you'll drop as well. So for example, someone who eats really healthy to lose weight, they lose the weight, well, then they don't want to maintain that habit anymore because they've gotten the goal. Someone who works really hard for an external reward for a bonus, and then that bonus, they get it, that's fine. But now what incentive do they have to continue to work hard? So if you're only fueled by external motivation, when the thing happens, whether it happens or it doesn't, you're left with no motivation. And that's when you see a crash, motivation plummets, and now you're actually less motivated than you were when you even started the journey. Which explains why a lot of people tend to backslide and get stuck in the yo-yo cycle of change, where they're trying, starting, stopping, starting, stopping. So external motivation can be a reasonable strategy for short-term goals, but when it comes to long, sustained change, it's only going to leave you frustrated. When you understand the difference between external and internal motivation, you can start to question the common knowledge of motivation is fleeting or you won't always be motivated. I actually think that that's false. I think that the most successful people are actually always motivated. And that's why. Motivation is fleeting if you're trying to rely on external motivations. If you want to lose 20 pounds, that might be super motivating. You might think about how you'd look in a smaller dress or pants, how you wouldn't feel like the chubby guy in group photos over the summer. But then the reality of the task sets in. The challenge you're setting out for becomes real. And the motivation doesn't push or pull you hard enough to complete the task. In those moments, it's easy to say, I lost motivation, when actually I think it would be more truthful to say, the thing that I was relying for motivation turned out to actually not be the motivation that I needed. So how is it that the most successful people stay motivated? Well, they are motivated by something deeper. They are motivated internally, intrinsically. And as studies have shown, that is the type of motivation that will weather the storm. When you want to lose weight to quote unquote look better or show off, I mean, that's fine and dandy when things are going well, but the more time it takes and the more challenging it is, the less that motivation will keep you going. You start to think, is this really worth it? And screw it, I'm not going to be the size I wanted by summer anyway, who cares? Whereas someone who chooses to exercise purely because it's good for them and they want to treat their body with respect, that motivation doesn't leave. It can get hard, it can slow down, anything can happen. But the thing that they are motivated by, wanting to be better, wanting to be healthier, that doesn't go away. So as long as the person believes in that goal, they will continue to be motivated. So what separates the successful from the unsuccessful, from the stuck, the frustrated, the stagnant? It's having an internal instead of an external motivation. Importantly, this is often not something that's done consciously. But the people who find the most long-term success are the ones who find the internal motivator, either by choice, by luck, by happenstance, it doesn't matter, and they ride that wave of motivation. One caveat here is that a lot of people start extrinsically motivated, but can find success if they shift to a more internal motivation during the course. So for instance, someone who goes to the gym to look better, but finds that the very practice of exercising gives them so much that the change in their looks is just the icing on the cake, and they continue to work out for the new internal motivation that's driving them long past when they reach their weight loss goals or whatever it is. Now, how do we implement this into your life? Well, the secret to success is then to find the intrinsic internal motivator for the goals that you are working towards. Intrinsic motivation stands the test of time. It doesn't wax and wane like extrinsic motivation. That's the point. So to find intrinsic motivation, ask yourself 3 simple questions. Does this improve me or does it improve my situation? That's question 1. Question 2, who else will benefit from my success and or who else will suffer from my failure? And question 3 is, if the result never came, would I still want to do this thing? So the first question, does this improve me or does it improve my situation? Highlights the difference between the internal and external result. An internal result improves you as a person. An external result improves your situation. If you want to be rich, Having more money certainly improves your situation, but does it make you a better person? Probably not. Not to say that money is evil, just pointing out that adding an extra zero or comma to your bank account doesn't do anything for you as a human. It might feel motivating, but again, as Dessie found, that motivation is short-lived. The stock market is on a tear, you might be super motivated, but when it crashes, you're going to be in for a bad time. But if you instead focus on the skills that you have to develop to become an entrepreneur, to become successful, to be a successful entrepreneur, you need resilience, communication skills, you need to be a good marketer, you need to be good at sales. These things can all make you money, but they also have the added benefit of making you a stronger, more well-rounded person. And that internal focus will be much more motivating because it isn't swayed by the market or business cycles or whatever else is going on. So question 2 is, who else will benefit from my success, or who else will suffer if I fail? That might sound paradoxical because we're looking for internal motivation and thinking about other people as outside of you. But the reality is, if you are the only person that benefits, usually that's an external motivator. So again, someone getting more money, someone losing weight, they are the only person who benefits in that. No one else benefits if you lose 20 pounds to look better. That's internal motivation. But now, if you want to lose 20 pounds and you think about, when I lose 20 pounds, I'll be healthier and I'll be able to play with my kids more, that is an internal motivator because that means that you are growing as a person. You are getting better from that result. If you say, when I have $1 million, I'll be able to build houses in Africa and I'll be able to help with X, Y, and Z. That is more of an internal motivator because it shows growth inside of you from that result. Which is why we can also flip that and the question, who suffers if I fail? If the answer is no one but you, no one really suffers. That's an external motivator, right? Again, losing weight. If I want to lose 20 pounds to look better on the beach this summer, who suffers if I fail? No one, just me. I'm a little depressed about it. But if my motivation is, I want to be healthier so I can walk my grandkids down the aisle 30 years from now, and I relate that to my goal of weight loss, who suffers if I don't achieve this goal? Well, my kids, my grandkids, my family. That is more of an internal motivator because now it shows my personal growth. And the last question is, if the result never came, would I still do this thing? And that is the ultimate form of internal motivation, doing it purely for the love of the game. The teacher who continues to teach when he could have retired years ago. The entrepreneur who has a big exit from her first company and goes right on to starting the next one, even though she doesn't need the money. When Kobe Bryant won a championship and he was famously in the gym the very next morning at 4 a.m., just like he did every other day. Some of his teammates were still out partying. If it was just about winning, he could sit back and chill. He had just won the championship. He could take a month or two off. The only reason to get up and show up the very next day was because he had a deep, deep love for the literal practice he was doing. So whether it was on the biggest stages or a neighborhood park, he was going to show up. So if you're looking at creating a habit that improves you, not just your situation, and also improves the lives of those around you, like your kids, your partner, your employers, your coworkers, whoever, and it's something that you can truly say that you'd enjoy doing just for the sake of doing the thing, that is something that you are internally motivated towards. And that is something that the motivation will not ebb and flow. It will not be like an emotion that comes and goes. That is something that you are motivated to work towards, period. So the next question is, what happens if the thing that you want to do doesn't fall into that category? So you have 3 options there. The first is what most people do, which is just try to do it anyway. Focus on external motivators. But hopefully by now you see that that's not an ideal route because that will burn out. The second option is change the goal. If you're not internally motivated to reach a goal, then my question would be, why do you want that goal in the first place? Challenge your own knee-jerk answer that you want to have of, because I have to, and realize that there's nothing you have to do. Everything is a choice. Lots of people will say to me, I know I'm supposed to work out, but I hate working out. Well, you're never going to get to be consistent with an exercise routine if you're trying to do what you hate. So could you find something that you enjoy? Are there other forms of exercising that make you feel more motivated? Probably. Have you tried dancing? Have you tried rowing? Have you tried all these other options that maybe you would find something that you like. And the third option, instead of changing the goal completely, is to reframe the goal to create more internal motivation. You can do this by taking the first two questions that I laid out and word them just a little bit differently. So the first question was, does this improve me or my situation? So you can ask yourself, how will this improve me and not just my situation? That will shift your focus from the external to the internal. So if you want to build an exercise habit and you're too focused on weight loss, which is an external goal, you'll ask, how will this improve me as a person? And you might say, I'll learn to do uncomfortable things. I'll grow in my body. I'll have more energy. I'll become stronger. Whatever it is. This takes that same habit, that same goal, which is exercise, and shifts it internally. And secondly, you can ask yourself, who else would benefit? As the example I used before, if my motivation is only about me, I'm going to lose that at the first sign of struggle. But if I can think, who else would benefit from this? Who else would benefit from my success? That would make it deeper, and that would give me a deeper connection to that goal, because I'm less likely to want to let down my friends, my family, my kids, or whoever else. So that first question, how will it improve me, shows me how you will grow. And then the second question, who else will benefit, shows why that growth is important. A stronger you is better for your kids. A more comfortable you is better for your partner. And that deepens the motivation. So your action step for this week is to think about the goals you've been working towards recently, or maybe that you've tried in the past, and ask yourself if the motivation was internal or external. Was it something that you were working on truly for yourself, or was it something you were trying to get for some reason that exists outside of you? If it was external, use the two questions I just gave you to try to reframe and find a more internal motivation, and see if the changes that you're trying to implement now feel more motivating to achieve. Remember, if you're not motivated, it's simply because you're looking at things from the outside rather than going from the inside out. Motivation is not some mystical thing. It can be quantified, it can be honed, and it can be built. The issue is where you choose to focus to try to get your motivation from. So now you can start to see when you've lost motivation in the past, it's not a question of actually losing motivation, but more an issue of seeking motivation from things that actually aren't truly motivating you in the first place. So that is a big step in itself, and one that if you continue to focus on, you'll see pay dividends for a long time, especially since intrinsically motivating things are the things that will change your life in the biggest, most meaningful ways. And that is change made easy. If you're really passionate about making this change stick, then I just have to remind you about my free weekly newsletter. Don't miss out on joining the thousands of change seekers just like you who get a curated list each week of 5 educational, informative, and inspiring pieces of content that will help you on your quest for change. Go to the notes of whatever app you're listening on and click the link that says free newsletter now. And you'll be signed up to get free tips sent straight to your inbox every Friday that will help make your change journey easier. All you have to do is click free newsletter right now. Go to that link and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday for new episodes of Change Made Easy.